about 35 minutes or so. Really an incredible image of just standing here, adding their quiet dignity to this and sort of doing their thing while everyone else around them is able to move around. You can hear the singing inside the National Assembly. There's sort of a stark contrast really in how that works, but it really adds to the sort of nature of this particular occasion. There really are some very loud voices from inside there.
Yeah, they certainly are, because we can hear this clearly, and I don't assume they have microphones as they are singing, but yeah, that's what's happening right there. And Trevor Manuel and Maria Ramos entering now.
And of course you have Trevor Manuel, who is currently in the private sector but playing a big role of Finance Minister, National Planning Minister as well. And then he was appointed, I think it was today or yesterday, the chair of that panel to look for a new SARS commissioner. Maria Ramos stepping down last week came the announcement as CEO of ABSA. Patrice Motsepe also there as well now with his wife. And Stumo Dlamini, the former president of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, there as well. So very interesting guest list. I mean, I'm sure Patrice Motsepe has been here probably for all of them.
I would imagine, yeah. I remember seeing him, so I would imagine he would have been. But of course, after we had some of the events that he's participated in, the Motsepe Foundation and all the events that they have been a part of, and of course his business interests as well, his relationship with the president, very personal, familial relations. So he would be here, one would assume.
All right, there'll be other people, of course, that the cameras will go and spot out and look for and sort of look in the presidential bay, if you like. So Sophie de Bruyn, of course, someone who played a very, very important role in our history for a very long time, received that award at the big ANC event a couple of weeks ago. And so what we're beginning to see is, there's an old-fashioned phrase, that there's the gathering of South Africa's great and good all in one place.
And I think, we sometimes are very hard about this and we are very critical, but it is often good to just have that sort of gathering of all these eminent people.
So the President's motorcade is now making its way now to the National Assembly, to Parliament. So we're getting closer and closer to that moment. We will, of course, take that live here as he arrives and just have an idea of what's going to happen. But the President's motorcade is now on the way, which means that he really can only be moments away from actually arriving and getting this particular event underway. The moment that we're waiting for really will be at 7 o'clock. That's when he will be speaking.
Yeah, and speaking to various guests this morning, the Speaker of Parliament and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, they made it clear about the budget cuts, and the procession has also been cut down on, because there were certain groups of people that were traditionally invited to line the streets as the presidential procession comes up, but not anymore.
So a bit of a change for various reasons. We will have another State of the Nation address after the election, of course. We'll do some of this again. I imagine it might be slightly different in tone as well after an election. If you get a sense now, the stage is certainly set. You've got the band in the corner, you've got the soldiers right in the foreground, you've got some of the representatives of the armed forces ready, you've got the stage, the sort of small stage for the President to sit and take the salute, I presume is what he'll do.
Yes.
I'm wondering if somewhere, maybe out to sea, maybe just past Robben Island, there's a Gripen fighter or something like that that has to go quite far out to make sure it gets its fly past absolutely right. There'll be someone who's, maybe a couple of 1,000 feet up and sort of just making sure that they're in exactly the right place for that.
What's that phrase again? Military precision. So, that is actually what we're working on here, and you're absolutely right. When the President does eventually take to the podium there, the military band, and it's the Air Force band on this occasion, they set up to the left there, our left, to your right as you're watching these pictures, and they will then play the national anthem, and then you'll have the 21-gun salute and the flyby that you spoke about.
So they were practicing the flyby later. You don't want to miss it, okay? You really don't want to miss it. You want to make sure that you stick around for that. It really is quite something to actually watch. So we're getting closer and closer. So the presidential motorcade, we now know, is on its way. The stage is set. I think everything here is ready. I think we're probably just getting to the point where things are going to start happening.
Indeed, Stephen. And that presidential motorcade, of course, will make its way. It will start from the Slave Lodge, and that's, of course, just outside the entrance to the parliamentary precinct.
All right, let's keep an eye on what is going to be coming next. We've got a whole group of people waiting here for everything to get going. So I understand now that the motorcade has actually entered the precinct, which means that it comes into this particular area, and we'll actually be able to determine what happens from there next.
Where is it?
You have to tell us what's happening. Okay, so that's a police helicopter just circling above us, and then we're expecting the Deputy President is now walking up into the National Assembly, and what we have is a moment where he is actually arriving, and of course is accompanied by the senior parliamentary officials.
And the Deputy President, of course, is accompanied there by the Deputy Speaker of Parliament's National Assembly, and that is Mr. Lechisa Chinodi. Also, the Deputy Chairperson of Parliament's National Council of Provinces, Mr. Rasiriti Tau. So, as you can see, them entering right now.
So on your screens now, that is the motorcade of President Cyril Ramaphosa. One of the reasons why you're hearing helicopters in the background, I presume, is because of that. That is why you're actually hearing it. That'll be accompanying that motorcade as it now starts to enter the precinct. So we have the Deputy President, David Mabuza, now entering the House. We'll see what reaction he gets from members of Parliament. The singing, I think, has now either gone a little quieter or stopped, just to sort of allow the proceedings to start to take over.
And as that helicopter comes ever closer, I guess an indication that the President is coming ever closer to the House. And just bear with us because we're not going to try to outscream that particular helicopter. So the presidential motorcade now coming through as we had indicated, and waiting there for President Cyril Ramaphosa. But of course he will be accompanied by the National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete, and also the Chairperson of the Council of Provinces Thandi Modise, as well as the Secretary to Parliament.
Okay, so things getting ever closer to 7 o'clock and the start of proceedings here. And you know, that helicopter really does come very, very close indeed. Okay, so the helicopter now actually directly over this precinct, which means the president is now very, very close. I can see some senior military officers just making sure that everything is ready on the red carpet. We can hear ululation as well.
Indeed, and that an indication that the president may be just a few hundred feet from us now. So as he makes his way up the red carpet, as we'd indicated, flanked by the speakers of the two houses here at Parliament.
As he arrives, he's going to stand on a small stage in front of the National Assembly, and there he'll take the salute and the military honours as the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force. Yeah, here he is. Okay, we can see President Ramaphosa now, accompanied by the National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete.
And Thandi Modise also there, the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the Secretary of Parliament also there with them, and they will now make their way up to this podium in front of the National Assembly.
So President Cyril Ramaphosa now, you will be able to see, making his way up onto the steps, and then he will start to take the salute. So he is now there, and of course he is accompanied by the National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete in a very, very sharp shade of green.
And actually saw her nails this morning, and I actually kind of knew that she was going to wear green. So certainly is the color that she went for this evening. And behind them, of course, Thandi Modise. And I'm just trying to see, it is the President's wife next to Thandi Modise, the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces.
There'll be a moment now where we expect the President to take the salute, to be, he's greeting now, of course, the Deputy President, David Mabuza. We'll just simply watch events now unfold for a few moments.
So there we have it, and the proceedings, the formal proceedings outside the National Assembly are now complete. It's been concluded, and the President and his procession now moving in, and that means that the address, the State of the Nation, is imminent now.
Okay, in the meantime, the soldiers are still at attention here. So we have the President moving in, we have some of the other senior officials now beginning to move in as well, and we await for the actual Speaker to take control. And David Mabuza, the Deputy President, now entering the National Assembly, the actual chamber there. And you see him now on your screen just arriving in the National Assembly.
Indeed, Stephen, and again the singing, and unfortunately, as we said, we think we could hear some of the party singing earlier. Parliamentary choir now out in full voice, and you can hear them. They were singing since this morning, so they are now singing as the President enters the chamber.
So we do expect the National Assembly Speaker to take control of the situation. There'll be a moment of reflection as well. In the meantime, the soldiers here are beginning to slowly move out of the situation. We're just going to make some space for them as well, just to make sure we get out of their way.
And of course, the doors to the National Assembly now shut. So that is it. It is now on lockdown. And what will happen next is, of course, the proceedings inside the House, and then the President to deliver the State of the Nation of the address. So let's take a look at those visuals inside the National Assembly.
President of the Republic of South Africa.
Motoga Katutu Dumela Minato, Dumela and Ramaphosa. Kiri Toga to Cholesa Cholesa Sinisu Medise, Shavasa Kise. Kiri Murasa Moene, Kano Titla Market to Alele Titamiti Titu and Kibatita Batita, Katitani Titigala Wooditi. Kiri Cholesa to Cholesa Poro, Oto Kalimasi Shabasraho, Osa Kalimaka Holani, Horsis Kabola. Kirigara Kataka Ramaphosa Katum Lady Hansen, Kamaris and Kagajil, Kagakata Kama, Kavalan Kava, Kabisunga Kanya Kanya, Kakalalo, Kavaka Kagala, Kavala Sani. Kirimatamelato Tamimatamata, Milakimatamo, Fanata, Milamatamana, Misukumatamata, Muhile. Parabanya Makamuruma Chasarutala di Kubo, Pakamanguri gave a Kantaka Sorutala, Philippine Shawar Mamata, Topa, and Jana, the Shabakadu Boiti, Bagosawa, Kabahimadi Heka Putani, Kaulupuncha Makasamala, Mucha Joakidinopo, Linukana di Oje. Kiringa itamaga pudamla melempeta hanuka erunchaila umpetan tabana makola kakumakole nda uyando nda
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thanks. Please be seated. Honorable members, the President has called this joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces in terms of Section 84(2)(d) of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, read with the Joint Rule 71A, in order to deliver his State of the Nation address to Parliament. I now call upon the Honorable the President to address the joint sitting.
Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Balega Mbete, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Thandi Modise, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly and Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, and esteemed members of our judiciary, former President of the Republic, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, and Mrs. Mbeki, former President of the Republic, Mr. Kgalema Motlanthe and Mrs. Motlanthe, former Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Friedrich Jinwala, another former Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Max Sisulu, ministers and deputy ministers, premiers from our provinces, and speakers of our provincial legislatures, chairperson of SALGA and the executive mayors who are here with us today, Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Mr. Lesetja Kganyago, heads of our Chapter 9 institutions who are with us, Isitwalandwe Mama Sophie de Bruyn, Isitwalandwe Baba Andrew Mlangeni, Chairperson of the National House of Traditional Leaders, Nkosi Sipho Mahlangu, Western Cape Khoisan leader, Prince Jacobus Titus, Khosi John Molefe Pilane, Chief Aaron Martin Meselar, who is with us, the 2018 CAF Women's National Team Coach of the Year, Desiree Ellis, leaders of faith-based organizations, leaders of the academic and research institutions, veterans of the struggle for liberation, members of the diplomatic corps, invited guests, honorable members of the National Assembly, honorable members of the National Council of Provinces, fellow South Africans. I want to start off with a disclaimer that arises from my input last year when I invoked Hugh Masekela's song, Chuma Mina, and one member of the assembly here, none other than Mr. Julius Malema, whispered and said, "Sing it, sing it." He was challenging me to sing the song. I hesitated for a while, thinking that I would take him up on his challenge and sing, but I thought wise not to do so. Yesterday, by accident, I met Mr. Julius Malema, and we reached an agreement on how best a song like this could be sung. We agreed that if the EFF wins the elections, and he is installed as the President of South Africa, then he will invite me to come up stage and sing for him. So that is the agreement that we've got. And by sheer accident, I also met Mr. Musi Maimane, and I also recruited him to become a member of the band we are going to form. So we're going to form a wonderful band, and when Mr. Malema is president and stands here, we will perform for him. It is a great honor to stand before you today to deliver the 25th annual State of the Nation address in a free and democratic South Africa. This year, as a diverse people and as a united nation, we will, all of us, as South Africans, celebrate one of the greatest of human achievements. We will celebrate the triumph of freedom over subjugation, the triumph of democracy over racial tyranny, and the triumph of hope over despair. We will celebrate the irresistible determination of an oppressed people to be free and to be equal, but more importantly, to also be fulfilled. We will use this time to also recall the hardship and the suffering which generations of our people endured, their struggles, their sacrifices, and their undying commitment to build a South Africa that belongs to all the people who live in it. We will also remember with relief and exhilaration of the day of our freedom, the moment at which we became a nation, a country that is at peace with itself and the world. During the course of this year, we must and will reflect on the journey of the last 25 years. As South Africans, we will have to ask ourselves a number of questions, and some of those will be questions about our nationhood, and ask ourselves whether we have realized the promise of the nation that we were meant to be in 1994. We must spend this year, the 25th year of the anniversary of our freedom, asking ourselves whether we have built a society in which all South Africans equally and without exception enjoy their inalienable rights to life, dignity, and liberty. We must also ask ourselves whether we have built a society where the injustices of the past no longer define the lives of our people at present and also into the future. We must use this time to reflect on the progress we have made, the challenges we have encountered, the setbacks we have suffered, and also the mistakes that we have committed. A year ago, we set out on a path of growth and renewal. Emerging from a period of uncertainty and a loss of confidence and trust, we resolved to break with all that divides us, to embrace all that unites us. We resolved to cure our country of the corrosive effects of corruption and to restore the integrity of our institutions. We resolved to advance the values of our Constitution and to once again place at the center of our national agenda the needs of the poor, the unemployed, the marginalized, and the dispossessed. We agreed that in honor of the centenary of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela and Mama Albertina Nontsikelelo Sisulu, we would devote our every action, our every effort, our every utterance to the realization of their vision, a vision of a democratic, just and equitable society. In our magnificent diversity, and despite our many differences, the people of this country answered to the call of Tumamina. In their multitudes, South Africans asked not what can be done for them, but what they could do for their country. In ways both large and small, both public and private, South Africans of all walks of life set about building a better nation. Many reached out to other South Africans to lend a hand, as Hugh Masekela said, where others were going through difficulties. Others expressed a willingness to support government in its effort to turn our country around. Today, as we reflect on the year that has passed, we can attest to meaningful progress that has been made over the past year. Our people have embraced the renewal our country is going through and are much more hopeful about a better tomorrow. Our people's hope is not baseless. It is grounded on the progress that is being made, progress that they can see is underway on an ongoing basis. Over the last year, we have begun to rebuild a durable social compact for fundamental social and economic transformation with a number of key stakeholders in our country, as we promised. As social partners, we are restoring the bonds of trust, dialogue, and cooperation. We are reaching out to those parts of our society that have become disaffected, that have also become disinterested or marginalized through various forms of dialogue and engagement. Our efforts may have been uneven, and we still have much work to do, but we have demonstrated over the last year our shared determination to work together to confront our common challenges. We have focused our efforts much more on reigniting growth of our economy and creating jobs. We have worked together as government, labor, business, civil society, and various communities to remove the constraints to inclusive growth and to pursue far greater levels of investment. We held a very successful presidential job summit that agreed on far-reaching measures which, when fully implemented, will nearly double the number of jobs being created in our economy each year. Last year, a number of stakeholders raised their concerns about policy uncertainty and inconsistency in our country. We have addressed these concerns, and we continue to engage those stakeholders who raise concerns about our policy direction. In response to the dire situation at several of our state-owned enterprises, where mismanagement and corruption had severely undermined their effectiveness, we have taken decisive measures to improve governance. We have taken decisive measures to strengthen leadership and restore stability in strategic entities. We have also had to deal with the effects of state capture on vital public institutions, including our law enforcement agencies, whose integrity and ability to fulfill their mandate had been eroded in recent years. We have therefore acted to stabilize and restore the credibility of institutions such as the National Prosecuting Authority, the South African Revenue Service, the State Security Agency, as well as the South African Police Service. We have appointed a new National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batoi, to lead the revival. She has been charged with leading the revival of the NPA and to strengthen our fight against crime and corruption. You watch this space. We are implementing the recommendations of the Nugent Commission of Inquiry into SARS and are in the process of appointing a new commissioner to head this absolutely important and essential institution. You watch this space. On the basis of the report and recommendations of the high-level review panel on the State Security Agency, which was chaired by former Minister Sidri Mufamadi, I will soon be announcing a number of urgent steps to enable the reconstitution of a professional national intelligence capability for South Africa. And amongst the steps we will take to reconstitute a truly professional national intelligence capability whose task must be to defend and protect the people of South Africa and not any party political official. The steps that we will take will be the re-establishment of the National Security Council, which will be chaired by the President, in order to ensure better coordination of the intelligence and security-related functions of the state. We will also re-establish the two arms of our intelligence service, one focusing on domestic intelligence and the other one focusing on foreign intelligence. Now, work on the reconfiguration of the state is at an advanced stage. We are pleased to note that in the spirit of active citizenry, many South Africans continue to show great interest in the future configured state. During the course of the past year as the presidency, we have paid particular attention to the issue of violence and abuse perpetrated against women and children in our society. We responded to national concerns and calls by many South Africans by convening a summit on gender-based violence and femicide that has provided a firm basis for a coordinated national response to this crisis. We also convened the first Presidential Health Summit in October last year, which brought together key stakeholders from a wide range of constituencies in the health sector. At this health summit, the participants dissected the crisis in the health system and proposed a number of immediate short-term and medium-term solutions to improve the effectiveness of our health system. We begin this new year encouraged by the progress that we have made working together in reviving our economy and restoring our country's democratic institutions. We are determined to stay the course. We are undaunted by the considerable difficulties that may come our way and those that we still have to overcome. All of us as South Africans should really face up to the challenges and difficulties that lie ahead. the task of building a better South Africa is our collective responsibility as South Africans, as a nation. It is at the center of the work of every department of government, of every agency, of every public entity. It informs every policy, every program, and every initiative that we embark upon. While there is a broad range of critical work being done across government, this evening I want to address and focus on 5 most urgent tasks at this moment in our history. And these are tasks that will underpin everything that we will do this year. Working together, we must undertake the following tasks. Firstly, we must accelerate inclusive growth and job creation. Secondly, our history demands that we should improve the education system and develop the skills that we need on how we move into the future. Thirdly, we are duty-bound to improve the conditions of the life of South Africans, especially poor South Africans in our country. Fourthly, we have no choice but to step up the fight against corruption and state capture. And fifthly, we need to strengthen the capacity of the state to address the needs of our people. Now, over the past year, we have focused our efforts on accelerating inclusive growth, increasing levels of investment, and putting in place measures to create more jobs. Last year, our economy was confronted by the reality of a technical recession. Government responded with an economic stimulus and recovery plan that helped to redirect public spending to areas with the greatest potential for growth and job creation. Our approach was not to spend our way out of economic troubles, but to set the economy on a path of recovery. We introduced a wide range of measures to ignite economic activity, to restore investor confidence, to support employment and address the urgent challenges that affect the lives of vulnerable members of our society. We are pleased to report that significant progress has been made in restoring policy certainty in a number of areas. In mining regulation, we have gone a long way to restore policy certainty, and the mine owners are pleased with the progress we have made in this regard. The visa regime is another area which we needed to pay attention to. Much work has been done, great progress has been recorded, and we continue to work with the players in that sector, tourism and others, to ensure that we do exactly what will increase our acceptability by tourists to come to our country. We've crafted the path towards mobile spectrum allocation, and we are reviewing port, rail, and electricity prices. We also began the process of stabilizing as well as supporting 57 municipalities where over 10,000 municipal infrastructure projects are currently being implemented. The focus was placed on revamping industrial parks in townships and in rural areas, has brought about discernible change as industrial parks that have been lying idle are becoming productive again. We have so far completed the revitalization of 10 out of 16 identified industrial parks in places such as Botshabelo, Putadichaba, Harankua, Isitebe, Komani, and Sishikhu. Many others are going to follow. The levels of growth that we need to make significant gains in job creation will not be possible without massive new investment. The inaugural South African Investment Conference in October last year provided great impetus to our drive to mobilize 1.3 trillion rand in investment over 5 years. The investment conference, held just after 5 months of having come up with this idea, attracted around 300 billion in investment pledges from South African as well as in international companies. A huge success indeed. There was also significant increase in foreign direct investment last year. In 2017, we recorded an inflow of foreign direct investment amounting to 17 billion rand. Official data shows that just in the first 3 quarters of 2018, there was an inflow of 70 billion rand into South Africa. Now, this is a phenomenal achievement compared to the low level of investment in the previous years. Our investment envoys, Trevor Manuel, Kebisi Jonas, Pumzile Langeni, and Jaco Marie, as well as Invest South Africa, are closely monitoring the status of the investments announced at the investment conference to prove that our investment conference was not just a talk shop where empty promises were made. As we speak, projects to the value of 187 billion rand are being implemented, and projects worth another 26 billion are in the pre-implementation phase. That is progress. Now, drawing on the valuable lessons we have learned through a more focused effort and through the improvements we are making in the business environment, we aim to raise even more investment this year. We will be identifying the sectors and the firms we want and need in South Africa and actively attract investors. Based on our experiences over the past year, and to build on the momentum that we have achieved, we will host the South African Investment Conference again this year. It is our intention that the investment we generate should be spread in projects throughout the breadth and the length of our country. In this regard, I have asked our provincial governments to identify investable projects and ensure that we build provincial investment books for each of our 9 provinces to present to potential investors. One of our provinces has already done that, and that's KwaZulu-Natal, and we're working on others to do precisely the same. Now, following on our successful investment conference, a group of South African business leaders, moved by the spirit of Tumamina, initiated what they called the Public-Private Growth Initiative. And they came to see me, working with Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and they said, President, we want you to allow us to embark on this initiative, because through this initiative, we want to mobilize investments in various sectors of the South African economy. They have already identified 19 sectors and are working with 19 sectors of our economy, from mining to renewable energy, from manufacturing to agriculture. These industries expect to substantially expand investment over the next 5 years and create a vast number of new jobs, especially if we can enhance demand for local goods and ensure that the environment in our country continues to be strengthened and improve the conditions for doing business. As part of our ongoing work to remove constraints to greater investment, we have established a team from the Presidency, Invest South Africa, National Treasury, and the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation that will address the policy, legal, regulatory, and administrative barriers that frustrate investors. This is an important aspect of our work to improve the ease of doing business in South Africa, which is essential to attracting investment. This team will report progress to Cabinet on a monthly basis. Now, the World Bank's annual Doing Business report currently puts South Africa number 82 out of 190 countries that they have tracked with regard to being able to do business in an efficient way. We have set ourselves the target of being amongst the top 50 global performers within the next 3 years, and we are going to get there. It has long been recognized that one of the constraints that inhibit the growth of our economy is the high level of economic concentration. The structure of our economy was designed to keep the assets of our nation in a few hands. This has stifled growth and enterprise and has to a large extent kept many South Africans, particularly young South African entrepreneurs, as well as small, medium enterprises, out of the economy and have confined them to the margins, to the townships, to the rural areas. As part of our effort to increase investment and to foster greater inclusion and create more opportunities, I will soon sign into law the Competition Amendment Bill. Now, the Competition Amendment Bill will give the competition authorities the ability to address this problem, but more importantly, it will also help in opening up new opportunities for many South Africans to enter various sectors of the economy and to compete with current players who have tended to monopolize certain sectors of our economy and compete on an equal footing. That is what we want to see. Now, to stimulate growth in the economy, to build more businesses and employ more people, we need to find new and larger markets for our goods and services. We will therefore be focusing greater attention on expanding exports. In line with the Job Summit commitments, we will focus on the export of manufactured goods and trade in services such as business process outsourcing and the remote delivery of medical services. We will also be looking at establishing special economic zones that will be dedicated to producing specific types of products, for instance, such as clothing and textiles, which are much needed in a number of places in our country. To improve the competitiveness of our exports, we will complete the studies that have begun on reducing the costs of electricity, trade, communications, transport, and other costs. We will focus on raising the sophistication of our exports and move up the value chain so that our country begins to produce really good quality products that are much needed in many places of the world and particularly on our continent. The agreement on the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area offers our country, and indeed a number of other countries on the continent, great opportunities. But for us, it offers us, as South Africans, a path of investment-led trade, and it also offers the possibility to work with other countries to develop our own industrial capacity. The agreement will see the creation of a huge market of over 1 billion people with a combined GDP of approximately $3.3 trillion. Alongside a focus on exports, we will pursue measures to increase local demand through, amongst other things, increasing the proportion of local goods and services procured both by government and the private sector. Increasing local demand, Madam Speaker, and reducing the consumption of imports is important because it increases the opportunities for producers within South Africa to serve a growing market. Through this, we will intensify the Buy South Africa program. Now, given the key role that small businesses play in stimulating economic activity, as well as employment, and in advancing broad-based Black economic empowerment, we are focusing this year on significantly expanding our small business incubation program. The incubation program provides budding entrepreneurs with a number of services, some of which are providing them with space, infrastructure, shared services, access to specialized knowledge, market linkages. It also provides them with training in the use of new technologies, but it also assists them to access finance. The incubation program currently consists of a network of 51 technology business incubators, 10 enterprise supplier development incubators, and 14 rapid youth incubators. And as part of the expansion of this program, township digital hubs will be established initially in 4 provinces, with more to follow later. And we expect that these hubs will provide much needed entrepreneurial service to small and medium enterprises in the rural areas and the townships, but more especially to young people who want to start their own businesses. And there are many of those in South Africa. Our greatest challenge is to create jobs for the unemployed of today, while preparing workers for jobs of tomorrow. The Presidential Job Summit last year resulted in concrete agreements between organized labor, business, community, and government. These agreements, which are now being implemented by social partners, aim to create 274,000 additional direct jobs every year. And this is apart from the normal jobs that the economy and businesses will be creating of their own volition. We are now on the cusp of seeing more jobs being created in our economy. We have come up with great plans. We've also crafted a number of wonderful platforms and initiatives through which we continue to draw young people in far greater numbers into productive economic activity through initiatives such as the Employment Tax Incentive. Now, this incentive will be extended for another 10 years because we have seen how beneficial it is to getting young people to get into the job situation. In addition, we have launched the Youth Employment Service, which is placing unemployed youth in paid internships in companies across the economy. We call on all companies, both big, small, to participate in this initiative and thereby contribute not only to building their businesses, but also to building the economy and fostering social cohesion. Progress is being made in areas of installation, repair, maintenance jobs, digital, tech jobs like coding, data analytics, as well as global business services. These enable us to absorb more young people, especially those exiting schools and colleges and those not in any education, training, or employment. They help us to bring them into the productive economic sector and further work opportunities. As government, we have decided that the requirement for work experience at every level in state institutions will be done away with. Now, our young people need to be given real head starts in the world of work. They should not face barriers and hindrances when they seek work. We must open the channels for them to get jobs. We will be focusing our attention, our policies, and our programs on the key parts of the economy that are labor intensive. And these include agriculture, tourism, and the ocean economy. The potential of agriculture in South Africa for job creation and economic growth still remains largely underdeveloped. South Africa still has large areas of underutilized or unproductive land. There are around 250,000 small emerging farmers in our country who are working the land, and they are the people who need support the most to fully develop their farming enterprises and businesses, and they are the ones we are going to focus on. Agricultural exports are an important source of revenue for our economy, and developing our agricultural sector is key to enhancing our food security and also for attracting investment. We are fortunate to have an agricultural sector that is well developed, resilient, and diversified. But we are also unfortunate to have an agricultural sector that was devastated by the apartheid period. We intend to use this developed sector as a solid foundation to help develop agriculture in our country for the benefit of all. Through an accelerated program of land reform, we will work to expand our agricultural output and promote economic inclusion. Our policy and legislative interventions will ensure that more land is made available for agriculture, industrial development, as well as human settlements. I wish to commend the many South Africans who participated in the work of the Constitutional Review Committee in the dialogue that ensued through the length and the breadth of our country on the issue of land reform. I applaud the members of the Constitutional Review Committee for remaining focused throughout this period and for sifting through the submissions that were made by ordinary South Africans and their organizations. Now, we will support the work of the Constitutional Review Committee that has been tasked with a review of Section 25 of the Constitution to unambiguously set out provisions for the expropriation of land without compensation. That we will do. Alongside this constitutional review process, we tasked Deputy President David Mabuza to lead the Interministerial Committee on Land Reform to fast-track land reform. Now, fantastic work has really been done through the Interministerial Committee, An advisory panel of experts headed by Dr. Vuyo Matlati, established to advise government on its land reform program, is expected to table the report by the end of March in 2019. Now, as part of accelerating land reform, we have identified land parcels that are owned by the state for redistribution. Strategically located land will be released to address human settlements needs in urban and peri-urban areas. As part of the stimulus package in agriculture, we have invested significantly in comprehensive farmer development support to ensure that restituted and communal land is productively utilized. We will continue to prioritize targeted skills development and capacity building programs for smallholder and emerging black farmers. In the coming year, we will continue to focus on high-value agricultural products with export potential such as our fruit, our wine, our vegetable industries, as well as poultry and red meat. During SONA last year, we spoke at length about the huge potential that exists for the expansion of the tourism sector. Our concerted efforts that have been ongoing to market South Africa as a prime destination for tourists have yielded positive results, with significant annual growth in the number of foreign visitors. In the last year, we had 10 million tourists who came to our country, which is a huge increase. We intend to raise this to 21 million by 2030, targeting, amongst others, the largest and the fastest growing markets of India and China, as well as strong markets of our own continent. In addition to direct jobs, this export industry could generate as many as 2 million more jobs in food and agriculture, in construction, in transport, retail, and the creative and cultural industries by 2030. We will deepen the partnership between government and business to realize this vision. Our highest priority this year will be on the introduction of a world-class e-visa regime. This, combined with enhanced destination marketing and measures to strengthen tourism safety, will create the conditions for the growth we envisage and the jobs and opportunities that will follow. Our beautiful country, South Africa, has one of the longest coastlines, spanning 3,000 kilometers around the contours of our country from the east to the west. Our mere positioning as a country means we can harness the potential of our oceans to grow our economy. Now, since the Operation Phakisa on the oceans economy in 2014, we have secured investments of nearly 30 billion rand, and in the process, we have created 7,000 direct jobs. The investments have been mainly in infrastructure development, marine, manufacturing, aquaculture, and the oil and gas sector. The expected investment in the oceans economy over the next 5 years is estimated at 3.8 billion rand by government and 65 billion by the private sector. Now, these investments are expected to create over 100,000 direct jobs and more than 250,000 indirect jobs. Last night, I received a call from Minister Mantashe, Gwede Mantashe, when he told me when he told me that the oil giant Total would be making a big announcement today about a new world-class oil and gas discovery off the coast of South Africa. Now, whether you like it or not, we were extremely encouraged by the report this morning about the Brulpanda block in the Ontanikwa Basin, which some have described as a catalytic find. This could well be a game changer for our country and will have significant consequences for our country's energy security. Now, we are now facing what could be a true game changer, which we have been yearning for many years. This could well be that moment. We congratulate Total and its various partners and wish them well in their endeavors. Government will continue to develop legislation for the sector so that it is properly regulated for the interests of all South Africans. That is important because we want to have this sector, which could yield enormous benefits for our country, as it has done for a number of other countries, to be properly managed, to be properly regulated. Over the past 5 years, we've made significant progress with the provision of infrastructure. More than 1.3 trillion rand has been invested to build hundreds of schools and two new universities. It's been invested to build hundreds of thousands of new homes, to electrify more than 1 million homes, to generate new electricity, and to expand public transport. These infrastructure investments also helped to grow our economy and to create many new jobs in construction and other sectors. Infrastructure development has been the flywheel of the engine of our economy and has yielded tremendous benefits for the country. We know that we must do more in the infrastructure space. Our infrastructure development has slowed down over the years for a whole number of reasons. We have also realized that our infrastructure provision is far too fragmented between the different spheres of government. It does not fully integrate new housing development with economic opportunities and with the building of dams, water, pipelines, schools, and other amenities. Cabinet has adopted a new infrastructure implementation model to address these problems. It will be underpinned by the new infrastructure fund that we announced last year in September. Government has committed to contribute 100 billion into the infrastructure fund over a 10-year period and use this as leverage financing from the private sector and developmental finance institutions. As a first step, and let me say here, as soon as the infrastructure fund idea was flighted, a number of institutions, some of them long-term managers of money, have said to us, this for them is precisely what they've been looking for, to come in and invest in infrastructure projects along with government. So I think we are onto something good. As a first step, we will expand projects that are already underway, such as student accommodation, particularly at our TVET colleges and our universities. Through this, we plan to do things differently starting with deeper partnerships with our communities in the planning and building and maintenance of infrastructure, just as we did with the Vaal River, where the SANDF intervened to address sewage crisis. We will call on the capabilities of the state as well as the private sector to address infrastructure challenges. We will strengthen the technical capacity in government to ensure that projects move faster, building a pool of engineers, project managers, spatial planners, and quantity surveyors. The telecommunications sector represents vast potential for boosting economic growth. The Minister of Communications will shortly be issuing policy directing to ICASA for the licensing of a high-speed radio frequency spectrum. As a water-scarce country, we are confronting water crises in many parts of the country. We are developing a comprehensive integrated national plan that will address water shortages, that will also address aging infrastructure and poor project implementation. We are urgently establishing an intergovernmental rapid response technical team reinforced by professionals to intervene in areas which are experiencing severe water problems. In one of these areas, in Guyana, for instance, extensive work is currently underway to get water to the residents in the immediate term through the repair of boreholes and then through the rapid provision of proper infrastructure. The safety of our learners in schools is critical for creating a healthy learning environment. We recall with deep sadness the tragic deaths of Michael Komape, who drowned in a pit toilet at Mahlo Dumela Primary School in Limpopo in 2014, and Lumka Mketwa from Luna Junior Primary School in the Eastern Cape, who lost her life in March last year. The Minister of Basic Education immediately acted on the request from the Presidency and conducted an audit last year which found that nearly 4,000 schools still have inappropriate sanitation facilities. Given the scale and urgency of the problem, we launched the SAFE initiative in August last year, through which we mobilized all available resources, including pledges from the business sector, from strategic partners, and the building industry to replace all unsafe toilets in public schools. Now, since we launched this project, 699 schools have been provided with safe, appropriate sanitation. And a further 1,150 schools are either in planning or design or construction phase. We are determined to eradicate unsafe and inappropriate sanitation facilities within the next 3 years. Watch this space. This is an outstanding example of collaboration between government as well as business. Business which responded with urgency to the need that impacts on the rights of South African children to a safe and dignified education provision. We are making important progress in restoring the integrity and capacity of our state-owned enterprises. To restore proper corporate governance, new boards with credible, appropriately experienced and ethical directors have been appointed at Eskom, Denel, Transnet, Safcol, PRASA, and SA Express. We have established the Presidential SOE Council, which will provide political oversight and strategic management in order to reform, to reposition and revitalize state-owned enterprises so that they can play the role that they were meant to. We want our SOEs to be fully self-sufficient and be able to fulfill their developmental and economic role. Where SOEs are not able to raise sufficient financing from banks, from capital markets, from developmental finance institutions, or from the fiscus, we will need to explore other mechanisms. Mechanisms such as strategic equity partnerships, or even selling off non-strategic assets. As we do this, we will not support any measures that in any form dispose of assets of the state that are strategic to the well-being of the economy and the people of South Africa. We have the task and the responsibility to safeguard as well as to build and sustain those key institutions for future generations. We have sought credible plans from boards to put in place the right skills and expertise to manage these companies so that we can shift the focus from immediate stability to long-term sustainability. We also seek to build a pragmatic and cooperative relationship between government, organized labor, and private sector stakeholders, where we can jointly determine a strategic path for SOEs to create jobs, enable inclusive growth, and become operationally and financially sustainable. Security of energy supply in our country is an absolute imperative. Our electricity company, Eskom, is in crisis, and the risks it poses to South Africa are great. It could severely damage our economic and social development ambitions. We need to take bold decisions and decisive action when it comes to Eskom. The consequences may be painful, but they will be even more devastating if we delay taking action. Now, in responding to this crisis, we are informed by the need to minimize any adverse economic cost to the consumer as well as to the taxpayer. As we address the challenges that face Eskom, we will ensure that there is meaningful consultation and dialogue with all the key stakeholders. We will lead a process with labor, Eskom, and other stakeholders to work out the details of what we call a just transition and proper, credible, and sustainable plans that will address the needs of all those who may be affected. As we address the challenges that face Eskom, we also need to safeguard our national fiscal framework. We also need to achieve a positive impact on our sovereign credit rating and pay attention to the rights and the obligations of Eskom's funders. Eskom has come up with a 9-point turnaround plan which we support and want to see implemented. In line with this plan, Eskom will need to take urgent steps to significantly reduce its costs. It will need more revenue through an affordable tariff process. We need to take steps to reduce municipal non-payment and confront the culture of non-payment that exists in some communities. Now, this culture of non-payment has spread throughout the country, and we would like to call on all South Africans that it is imperative that all those who use electricity over and above the free basic electricity that is provided, that they should pay for the electricity that they use. Government will support Eskom's balance sheet, and the Minister of Finance will provide further details on this in the budget speech in a few days. This we will do because it is an imperative that we should embark on this path without burdening the fiscus with unmanageable debt. To ensure the credibility of the turnaround plan and to avoid a similar fiscal crisis in a few years' time, Eskom will need to develop a new business model. This business model needs to take into account the root causes of its current crisis and the profound international and local changes in the relative costs and market penetration of energy sources, especially the new technologies that are coming up. It needs to take into account the role that Eskom itself should play in generating energy from the new technologies. To bring credibility to the turnaround and to position South Africa's power sector for the future, we shall immediately embark on a process of establishing 3 separate entities: generation, transmission, and distribution under Eskom Holdings. This will ensure that we isolate costs and give responsibility to each appropriate entity. This will also enable Eskom to be able to raise funding for its various operations much easily from funders and the market. Of particular and immediate importance is the entity to manage an independent state-owned transmission grid combined with the systems operator and power planning, procurement, and buying functions. It is imperative that we undertake these measures without any further delay to stabilize Eskom's finances, to ensure security of electricity for all South Africans, to ensure that we establish the basis for Eskom's long-term sustainability. At the center of all our efforts to achieve higher and more equitable growth, to draw young people into employment and to prepare our country for the digital age, there must be the prioritization of education and the development of skills. With over 700,000 children accessing early childhood education in the last financial year, we have established a firm foundation for a comprehensive ECD program that is an integral part of the education system. This year, we will migrate responsibility for early childhood development centers from social development to basic education. And we will proceed with the process towards 2 years of compulsory early childhood development for all children before they go to grade 1. And this we are able to do not as a pipe dream, but preparations have already been put in place and we are ready for this to take off. Another critical priority is to substantially improve reading comprehension in the first years of school. This is essential in equipping children to succeed in education, in work, and in life. And it is possibly the single most important factor in overcoming poverty unemployment, and inequality. The department's early grade test reading studies have demonstrated the impact that a dedicated package of reading resources, expert reading coaches, and lessons plans can have on reading outcomes. We will be substantially expanding the availability of these early reading resources across the foundation phase of schooling. Over the next 6 years, we will provide every child in school in South Africa with digital workbooks and textbooks on a tablet device. And we will start with those wonderful schools that have been historically most disadvantaged, and the schools that are located in the poorest communities, including multi-grade, multi-phase, farm and rural schools. Already, as many of us will know, already 90% of the textbooks in high enrollment subjects across all grades and all workbooks have been digitized. There's quite a lot of excitement that this has generated. It looks like the members of the assembly here are looking forward to getting tablets themselves. In line with our framework for skills for a changing world, we are expanding the training of both educators and learners to respond to emerging technologies, including the Internet of Things, robotics, and artificial intelligence.
Can we have some order, honorable members? Order. Please proceed, Honorable President.
We're just concerned about plagiarism, but we'll deal with it later on.
Several new technology subjects and specializations will be introduced, including technical mathematics, technical sciences, maritime sciences, aviation studies, mining sciences, and aquaponics. Now, those are wonderful subjects that are going to be introduced. To expand participation in the technical streams, several ordinary public schools will be transformed into technical high schools. Now, anecdotally, I can say that the Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Angie Motshekga, reports that as these technical high schools have been opening, the subscription by young people has just shot up, showing and demonstrating that our young people are hungry for technical education, and that is what we are going to offer them. In line with government's commitment to the right of access to higher education for the poor, last year we introduced free higher education for qualifying first-year students. Thanks to this initiative, links have been re-established with all institutions, and institution heads and student leaders have played a critical role in communicating with students. The scheme is being phased in over a 5-year period until all undergraduate students who qualify in terms of the criteria can actually benefit. Now, stabilizing the business processes of NSFAS will also be a priority in the coming year so that it is properly capacitated to carry out its critical role in supporting eligible students, we are concerned about developments on some campuses right now this week, especially with regard to reports of violence and intimidation. Of particular concern is the tragic death of Mlungisi Madonsela, a student at the Durban University of Technology. We extend our deepest condolences to his family and call on law enforcement agencies to thoroughly investigate this incident. And we call on student representatives and university authorities to work together to find solutions to the challenges that students are facing. Minister Pandor is working persistently to address precisely this problem. We will give effect to our commitment to build human settlements in well-located areas that bring together economic opportunities and all the services and amenities that people need. The Housing Development Agency will construct an additional 500,000 housing units in the next 5 years, and an amount of 30 billion rand will be provided to our municipalities and provinces to enable them to fulfill their respective mandates. However, if we are to effectively address the substantial housing backlog in our country, we need to develop different models of financing for human settlements. It is for this reason that we are establishing a Human Settlements Development Bank that will leverage both public and private sector financing to aid in housing delivery. We will also be expanding the People's Housing Program, where households are allocated service stands to build their own houses, either individually or through community-led housing. Now, South Africa has one of the most comprehensive and far-reaching social security nets in the world, providing a buffer between poor households and abject poverty. Every month, 17.5 million social grants are provided to South Africans. The Department of Social Development is to be commended for having honored the Constitutional Court's directive for phasing out the services of cash pay master services. To date, the majority of grant beneficiaries have been successfully migrated to the South African Post Office and to old SASSA cards, and the old SASSA cards have been replaced by the new ones. We have made significant progress in devising a comprehensive social security strategy through NEDLAC. The reforms focus on achieving comprehensive social security and retirement reform that is affordable and appropriate for all South Africans. Now, with the assistance of the National Planning Commission, we reached consensus on the reforms that include the National Social Security Fund, institutional arrangements, regulatory reforms, improved unemployment benefits, improved social assistance coverage, and active labor market policies for citizens between 18 and 59 years. We will now incorporate this consensus agreement into a policy framework to guide implementation. This year, we will take a significant step towards universal access to quality health care for all South Africans. After extensive consultation, the National Health Insurance Bill will soon be ready for submission to Parliament. The NHI will enable South Africans to receive free services at the point of care in public and private quality accredited health facilities. By applying the principle of solidarity and cross-subsidization, we aim to reduce inequality in access to health care. Now, this is based on a very straightforward concept that is spreading throughout the world, that those who are more financially capable should help to subsidize the less capable. The young must subsidize the old, the healthy must also subsidize the sick. This is a concept that's spreading throughout the world. Realizing the magnitude of the challenges of healthcare, we have established an NHI and quality improvement war room in the presidency, consisting of various key departments to address the crisis in the public health system while preparing for the implementation of the NHI. We have a funded national quality health improvement plan to improve every clinic and hospital that will be contracted by the NHI. By introducing the NHI together with a multi-pronged quality improvement program for public health facilities, we are working towards a massive change in the healthcare experience of South Africans. While we have made progress since 1994 in bringing down certain categories of serious crime, communities across our country are still plagued by gangsterism and violence. As part of our concerted effort to make our country safer and more secure, the community policing strategy was launched in October last year. The strategy essentially focuses on building partnership between communities and the police, making more resources available for policing, and better communication between the police and communities about crime prevention strategies. This will enable the policemen and women of our country to become more proactive in addressing crime and broader public safety concerns. In addition, we are strengthening the functioning of various specialized units, such as the Family Violence, Child Protection, Sexual Offences units, and improving our administrative and record keeping. The South African Police Service has embarked on a restructuring process to shift more policing resources to the local level. Violence against women and children has reached epidemic proportions in our country. Every day, South African women are faced with discrimination, they are faced with abuse, with violence, and even death. And this often happens at the hands of those closest to them. Over the last year, we have started to address this scourge in a more serious and coordinated fashion. At the Presidential Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Summit, women from all walks of life came together with government and civil society, and they came together to outline a roadmap to end gender-based violence in our country, and to improve coordination of planning, and to establish a commitment to resourcing, and also to make sure that there is accountability. Work is underway to implement the decisions of the summit, including preparing the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence. This year, we will work with our partners in civil society to implement the decisions of the National Summit on Gender-Based Violence. We are expanding and dedicating more funds to places of support, such as the Tutuzela Care Centers and the Khuseleka Care Centers as well. We have been working to ensure the better functioning of sexual offences courts. We will improve the quality of services in shelters and ensure they also accommodate members of the LGBTIQI+ community. We will strengthen the National Healthline Center that supports women who experience gender-based violence and ensure that it is functional. We have listened to the call by the women of our country to make funds available to combat gender-based violence and to have allocated funding in the current budget to support the decisions taken at the summit. This we shall do. Government will lead the campaign to include men and boys as active champions in the struggle against gender-based violence. Ending gender-based violence is an urgent national priority that requires the mobilization of all South Africans and the involvement of all our institutions. South Africa has extremely high levels of substance abuse, which feeds crime and violence against women and children. It deepens poverty and causes great hardships and pain for families. As government, we continue to roll out interventions to address social ills tearing our communities apart, such as alcoholism and substance abuse. Knowing as we do that there are strong linkages between substance abuse, drug trafficking, crime, and insecurity in communities, we are focusing on tackling this program at its source through prevention programs targeting vulnerable persons and especially our youth. We are resolute that all taverns, all shebeens, and liquor outlets that are near school premises must be shut down. We recognize, as do all South Africans, that our greatest efforts to end poverty, unemployment, and inequality will achieve little unless we tackle state capture and corruption in all its manifestations and in all areas of public life. The action we take now to end corruption and to hold those responsible to account will determine the pace and the trajectory of the radical social and economic transformation we seek. The revelations emerging from the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture and other commissions are deeply disturbing, for they reveal a breadth and depth of criminal wrongdoing that challenges the very foundations of our democratic state. Now, we commend these commissions for the work that they are doing. And some of them are doing very important work. And some of them are doing very important work under difficult and challenging circumstances to uncover the truth. Now, what is important is that the truth must be revealed. These commissions need to be able to do their work without any hindrance, and we call on all those who are in a position to assist them in their investigations to make themselves available. While these commissions will in time make findings and recommendations in line with their mandates, evidence of criminal activity that emerges must be evaluated by the criminal justice system. Where there is a basis to prosecute, prosecutions must follow swiftly. Now, and stolen public funds must be recovered urgently without any fail. Now, to this end, we have agreed with the new National Director of Public Prosecutions.
Order, members. Order. Can we proceed, please?
Honorable Speaker.
Now, to this end,
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable President, please. Is that a point of order, Honorable Malema?
No, Tabama Gwetla is clapping hands here. This guy is
Thank
going
you,
to
sir.
jail. He thinks we are playing.
Honorable Malema, that was not a point of order. Honorable Tabang, don't clap hands. Please proceed, Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson of Council of Provinces, to this end, we have agreed with the new National Director of Public Prosecutions that there is an urgent need to establish in the office of the NDPP an investigating directorate dealing with serious corruption and associated offenses in accordance with Section 7 of the NPA Act. Now, I will soon be promulgating a proclamation that will set out the specific terms of reference of the directorate. In broad terms, the directorate will focus on the evidence that has emerged from the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into state capture, other commissions, and disciplinary inquiries. It will identify priority cases to investigate and prosecute, and will recover assets identified to be to the proceeds of corruption. The directorate will bring together a range of investigatory and prosecutorial capacity from within government and in the private sector under an investigating director reporting to the NDPP. The NDPP, therefore, will be acting, and I'd like this to be very clear, will be acting in terms of the law, in terms of the rule of our law, without any favor, without any prejudice. She will execute her tasks that are enshrined in our Constitution. In the longer term, we will work with the NPA and other agencies of law enforcement to develop more enduring solutions that will strengthen the capacity of the criminal justice system to deal with corruption. Fellow South Africans, as we grapple with the challenges of our recent past, and as we deepen our efforts to overcome the grave injustices of centuries, it is essential that we do so with our eyes firmly fixed on the future. The world we now inhabit is changing at a pace and in a manner that is unprecedented in human history. Revolutionary advances in technology are shaping the way people work and the way they live. They are transforming the way people relate to each other, the way societies function, and the way they govern and governed. The devastating effects of global warming on our climate are already being felt, with extreme weather conditions damaging livelihoods, communities, and economies. As a young nation, only 25 years into our democracy, we are faced with a stark choice. It is a choice between being overtaken by technological change or a choice of harnessing it to serve our developmental aspirations. It is a choice between entrenching inequality or creating shared prosperity through innovation. unless we adapt, unless we understand the nature of the profound change that is shaping our world, and unless we readily embrace the opportunities it presents, the promise of our nation's birth will forever remain unfulfilled. Today, we choose to be a nation that is reaching into the future. In doing so, we are building on a platform of extraordinary scientific achievement, the successful construction in our own very country, in the Northern Cape, of the Meerkat telescope, the world's largest and most sensitive radio telescope, and the development of the square kilometer array has enabled South Africa to develop capabilities in areas such as space observation, advanced engineering, and supercomputing. These skills and capabilities are being used to build what they call the HERA, a radio telescope that is designed to detect for the very first time in the history of the world the distinctive radio signal from the very first stars and galaxies that formed early in the life of the universe. It is being done here in South Africa. This is not merely about advancing human understanding of the origins of the universe. It is about responding to the challenges that face South Africans now and into the future. It is about developing the technology and capabilities that will build a dynamic, competitive economy that creates decent and sustainable jobs. It is about enhanced food security, better disease management, and cheaper, cleaner, and more efficient energy. It is about smart human settlements and social development solutions built around people's needs and preferences. It is about smarter, more responsive, and more effective governance. To ensure that we effectively and with great urgency harness these technologies, I have appointed a presidential commission on the fourth industrial revolution. This commission is comprised of eminent persons drawn from different sectors of society. The commission will serve as a national overarching advisory mechanism on digital transformation. Now, this is about preparing our country for the future. It will identify, this commission, and recommend policies and strategies and plans that will position South Africa as a global competitive player within the digital revolution space. Now, building on the work we've done over the last year, we will focus also on issues that many South Africans are concerned about, strengthening the state. We have made progress in examining the size and structure of the state, and will complete this work by the end of this administration. We only have a few months to go, and the life of this administration comes to an end, and boom, we will have a reconfigured state in the next administration. Now, as we look forward to this wonderful, brave future, we invite all South Africans who would wish to do so to make suggestions on how we can better configure our government to serve the needs and the interests of the people of our country. In improving the capabilities of public servants, the National School of Government is introducing a suite of compulsory courses covering areas like ethics and anti-corruption. We will process the operationalization of Section 8 of the Public Administration Management Act. This provision will see the imposition of harsher penalties, including fines and prison sentences for officials that transgress these rules. South Africa has this year taken our non-permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. We will use this position to advance peace on our continent and across the globe, taking forward Nelson Mandela's vision of a peaceful, stable, and just world. In a few months' time, South Africa will go to the polls for the 6th time in our democracy to vote for national and provincial government. This is an opportunity for our people to exercise their hard-won right to determine the direction of this country. I have engaged with the Independent Electoral Commission, as well as our various premiers, and also in all the provinces, and intend to proclaim the 8th of May 2019 as the date of the elections. We wish to remind all eligible South Africans who have not yet registered as voters.
Order. Order.
Now we wish to remind all South Africans who have not yet registered as voters that they still have until the proclamation of the election date to register. We are a people of resilience, we are a people of great determination, and we are a people of great optimism. Despite the worst excesses of apartheid, we did not descend into vengeance when our freedom was won. Our democracy has blossomed. It has also flourished. It has been nurtured by the goodwill of the men and women of this great nation and this great land, who understood only too well at what cost our freedom was attained. But the road towards true freedom is a long one, and we have seen divisions in our society grow. Between black and white, rich and poor, between rural and urban, between the sexes, and between language groups and cultures. This has been most disturbing to many of us. At times, it has seemed like the milk of human kindness that allowed us to reconcile in 1994 had gone sour. But we will not surrender to the forces of pessimism and defeatism. Our society is anchored in the roots of tolerance as well as coexistence. And we stand firm, resolute and united against all and everything that seeks to divide us or destroy our hard-won gains. They told us building a non-racial South Africa was impossible, and that we would never be able to truly heal our bitter past. Yet we weathered the storm and we are prevailing. It was the eternal optimism of the human spirit that kept hopes alive during our darkest time. It is this optimism that will carry us forward as we face a brave new future. It is a South Africa in which every man, woman, and child is provided with the opportunity and the means to make a better life for themselves. It is a South Africa ready to take advantage of the technological changes sweeping the globe to make our economy grow and create jobs for our people. It is a South Africa whose people have a vision, who have a drive and ambition, making it a hub of innovation, entrepreneurship, and enterprise. It is a South Africa that acknowledges the problems of the past, but looks firmly to the future. It is a South Africa whose leaders are bold and courageous, leaders who remain servants of the people, and for whom fulfilling their duty is the highest and the only reward. And above all, it is a South Africa of which we are all proud, of what we have achieved and where we hope to be. The task before us is formidable. Above everything else, we must get our economy working again. I call upon every South African to make this cause your own, because when we succeed, and if we do indeed, as we must, it is the entire nation that will benefit. Now, as government, as business, as labor, as all our citizens, let us unite and embrace tomorrow. Let us grasp our collective future with both hands in the immortal words of the Freedom Charter, side by side, sparing neither strength nor courage. This task of building a better South Africa is our collective task as a nation, as a people of South Africa. And as we approach these tasks and these challenges, we should heed the word of one Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails whilst daring greatly, so that in the end his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." Close quotes. Now, what this means, we all have a role to play as individual South Africans, as faith-based organizations, as sports organizations, as trade unions, as business, as students, as academics, and all of us as South Africans, as the judiciary, as politicians, yes, as all of us, Musi Maimani, Julius Malema, Bantu Olomesa, Reverend Misha, Menier Groenewald, Themba Godi, Musiwa Likota, Datepo Potlama, all of us have a role to play. Let us continue to embrace the spirit of active citizenry in line with the injunction of Tumamina in the onward march towards equality, freedom, and prosperity for all. Let us all be sent by this great country as it takes us forward to greater prosperity. Thank you very much.
We thank you, Mr. President. Re a leboga. Order. After I have adjourned the joint sitting, members and guests should please remain at their places until the procession and a member of the judiciary have left the chamber. The guests in the gallery should remain seated until the ushers indicate that the doors are indeed open. The procession, led by the Sergeant-at-Arms, the usher of the Blood Rock, will leave the chamber in the following order: the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the President, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the Deputy President, the Acting Secretary to Parliament. Members, this concludes the business of the day. This joint sitting is adjourned.
Oh, Mabope. Oh, Mabope. Oh, crazy. Sasa
Good evening. President Cyril Ramaphosa finishing his speech there with a call to all South Africans to do their bit. You heard as well, of course, during that speech, big changes coming for Eskom, the economy, and a look to the future as well. And they're in the middle of all of that, big changes coming to the way that Eskom, the electricity parastatal, is currently being administered. And then towards the end, the announcement that on the 8th of May, you will be queuing to cast your ballot in our democratic elections. I'm joined now by the official leader of the opposition, Democratic Alliance, Mmusi Maimane. Mr. Maimane, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. Your first reaction to that speech.
Thank you, Stephen. I felt it was a state of no action. What's become quite clear is the fact that there were more promises, more summits, no immediate action. What limits the president is the fact that he has a party that is corrupt. What limits the president is that he's going to run out of money. And what's more crucial is that the biggest game changer this year is the 8th of May when we remove this government. Because clearly, he wants South Africans to pay more money for Eskom for all the mistakes that they've done in the last number of years. So what is absolutely crucial that we've got to focus on now is to say, can the president, who comes up with these plans every time and more summits, can he actually deliver? And frankly, there's been no evidence in the last year to convince anybody that he's able to do so. And why should we give him another 5 years to do the more empty promises and lack of delivery?
You say that, but there are plenty of plans within this. I mean, just the announcement alone of a directorate in the National Prosecuting Authority to investigate issues coming out of the State Capture Commission, surely that's concrete action.
We can have more directorates, more plans. Stevens, Batabile Dlamini is sitting in there. Nomvula Mokonyane has received bribes. Why is she not arrested? If we're serious, let's take decisive action and arrest people. We don't need more summits. We don't need more directorates. The capability is well within the state. The president, when he got elected last year, announced he's going to minimize the state and make it a 15, he's going to make cabinet much smaller. Our proposal has always been we want a smaller cabinet. And around jobs, what's going to become more important is that we need a job in every home. What I would love to hear the president talk about is actually, rather, let's stimulate, let's assist more small businesses. Let's ensure that cities are at the forefront so that actually we can deliver a job in every home. There's an immediacy. South Africans are sitting at home. home, hungry and poor. We need direct action, and we need it now, not more summits, more talk and less action.
The elections will be on May the 8th. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a big game changer. We're going to bring change in this country, and I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Musi Maimane, leader of the Democratic Alliance, thank you very much indeed. Bulelani Philip has more for you.
All right, thank you so much, Stephen. Obviously, a very comprehensive speech by the President. We're just going to tease out some of the aspects that are coming out of that State of the Nation address. Joining me now is the leader of the Freedom Front Plus, Dr. Pieter Groenewald. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Land expropriation, the President doesn't seem to be relenting on the mission to fulfill that.
Well, he is going to do it. And the fact of the matter is that he doesn't say exactly what the circumstances is going to be for expropriation without compensation. The view from the Freedom Front Plus is that for 25 years now, I heard about the economy that must grow to ensure that we create jobs. For 25 years. The fact of the matter is that it just does not happen. And I can assure the President, if he continues with expropriation without compensation, he will not build the economy. We just heard a wish list and a good analysis of the problems of South Africa, but we didn't hear how he's going to solve it. For instance, the reality versus the wish list. He intends to create 274,000 jobs annually, but the matrics entering the labor market is almost 800,000. If we look at the unemployment rate of South Africa, we see it's almost 38% unemployment rate. So it's nice words, which I've heard for 25 years already. But the fact of the matter is, in reality, people are experiencing something different. I am very worried. For instance, when we look at the proposal that he said he's going to have a new national intelligence institution, that reminds of the old State Security Council of the old apartheid government. So there are enough intelligence structures in South Africa. We don't need another one. Do they want to control everything? We are worried about that. And the President asked, for instance, that we must give some proposals to ensure that there is better service delivery from the government. It's very simple. The proposal from the Freedom Front Plus is do away with affirmative action.
All right,
get some competent people to do
Dr.
the job.
Groenewald, I'm sorry, we're running out of time. We're going to say thank you very much for your views on the State of the Nation address. On that note, we're going to say farewell, goodbye to the SABC2 viewers. You can continue watching this live broadcast on channel 404. And of course, we're still catching more reaction on the floor. We're going to cross to the other side of the precinct.
I am here with, thank you very much, I'm here with the leader of the EFF, Mr. Julius Malema. Mr. Malema, thank you very much for coming. The President has made all the right noises, isn't it?
No, not at all. The President has abandoned the ANC manifesto and decided to plagiarize the EFF manifesto. This is just a clear indication that the President has got nothing to offer, and we are happy that he himself acknowledges that this is his last State of the Nation address. He will go down in history as the last president of the ANC in this country to ever address the State of the Nation address. So we are more than confident that those who were actually saying the EFF manifesto, it's a wish list which is unrealistic, have now, been agitated towards agreeing with what the EFF has been saying throughout.
He addressed quite very nicely the issue of land, special expropriation without compensation. I'm sure with that one we'll agree with
him. No, he didn't say anything. He said he will support the work of Parliament. And that cannot be a wow moment, the work of Parliament was going to continue with or without his blessings. So the land is going to be expropriated without compensation. Section 25 is going to be amended through the motion that was put forward by the EFF, and we are unapologetic about that.
On state capture, he says that those who have committed sins, they will go to jail. Will you support that, and would you be part of the process of ensuring that this commission works appropriately?
Well, we support that. We in the EFF go beyond that. We say the officials who are found guilty of corruption, they will lose their pension funds. So those funds will be relocated to where they stole the money from. That's how much we are serious about fighting corruption. So the president is doing a lip service. I can tell you now, if the president is going to do what he said he's going to do in fighting crime and corruption, he won't finish his term as a president of the ANC and that of the country. And if he doubts that, he must ask President Mbeki, who established the scorpions like the president wants to do now. And the criminals in the ANC were so scared of such a crime-fighting machine and went against the president. The plan is clear, but will he get the internal support of his own party? I doubt, because if he continues to do that, he will arrest half the cabinet and half the National Executive Committee of the ANC.
Just before I let you go, I see that you got cold feet now. We didn't do what you wanted to do of making this a Q&A with the president, isn't it?
Well, the president, after the press conference of the EFF, had an interview with ENCA, answered the questions, went to the public protector, including releasing the statement he has given to the public protector. This is the president who says to all of us, I'm available to account. And that's what we say. The president must account, and if he's not going to account for Busasa issue, we are going to ask him here. So why ask him here when he has accounted? I mean, we don't have time for the flatheads. We made this point very clear. The man must account. If he doesn't account, he will account in Parliament. He accounted on ENCA, he accounted the public protector, and as if that was not enough, released what he told the public protector. That's why the EFF was happy to sit and listen. We may not be happy with the answer, but he has answered, unlike the arrogance of the previous regime.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malema. That is Julius Malema, the leader of the EFF. Stephen, it's back to you in the studio.
Okay, good evening to you once again. I'm joined now outside the National Assembly by Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the leader of the Inkatha Freedom Party. So thank you so much for your time. May I please ask for your reaction to the speech?
Well, I think that as a statement of intent, no one can fault it. So I think that the president, as far as intentions, his intentions of what he wants to turn our country around, to use a phrase, I mean, no one can fault that. And also the things that are confronting the country, I think he dealt with this in such detail that one would like to see action, of course. And I would like, of course, to believe it when I see the budget in a few days' time, where there is money, because billions and trillions were mentioned. One must see, because we're already borrowing money for housekeeping purposes. One would have to know whether, in fact, where this money is going to come from.
One of the perhaps surprise announcements was the huge effort that's going to go into, he says, clearing up from state capture. The new directorate of the National Prosecuting Authority, the new National Director of Public Prosecutions was in the gallery. Do you think he'll be able to do all of that when you consider what's happening in the ANC?
Well, the fact that the people, in fact, that Mr. Chris, who divulged so much of the rot, you know, in the last few weeks, was arrested with conspirators. In fact, does give one hope that, in fact, there is intention to take action rather than just verbalize what they want to do.
Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, sir, thank you very much indeed for your time. I really do appreciate it here on SABC News. Thank you. All right, back now to Bulelani. Bulelani, who have you got with you?
Well, thanks so much, Stephen. We're still taking a political reaction right here on the steps of the National Assembly. Joining me now is Professor Nhlanhla Khubisa from the National Freedom Party. Mr. Khubisa, the President touched on a lot of interventions in terms of fighting corruptions. The issue of establishing a specialized unit within the NPA, do you think that will go a long way in terms of prosecuting all the people implicated in the state capture allegations?
Well, I think it will not do anything because just now there are people who have been arrested. But among those, we don't see politicians being taken to task. We're hoping that, when people were being taken to task, like the whistleblowers, there will be politicians as well who are implicated. I think there should be punitive measures taken as soon as possible, but that has not been done. Now, establishing units, councils, commissions, I don't think it will assist us. You see, at the moment, he was very sketchy and closing over the issue. The issue of corruption is so endemic. As we speak now, ESCOM and other entities are bankrupt because of corruption. So I don't think the president was serious about it.
Just on the pronouncement of reconfiguring government and government departments, it's going to be completed within this fifth administration for implementation under the sixth administration. How would you like the government departments to be reconfigured? What suggestions would you put as the party?
Well, for instance, environmental affairs and tourism must come together. Higher education and science and technology must come together, and other department, basic education, could come together with higher education too. You know, we said long time ago that the government was bloated, hence there was a need to put some departments together. We hope that they will be trimmed so that we don't have 42 budgets. We have a meaner government, and we will save the government fiscus. At the moment, our government is in debt, and the sooner we ensure that the government is meaner and smaller, not bloated, I think we'll save some fiscus there.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Nhlanhla Khubisa, the Chief Whip of the National Freedom Party, giving us his party's views on the State of the Nation address. For more reaction, I believe Manelisi is standing by.
Yes, thank you very much, Bulelane. I'm with the leader of the PAC, Mr. Nyanso. Mr. Nyanso, the president said quite a number of very important things. So would you agree that he has made the right noises this time around?
He has made right rhetoric. Rhetoric after rhetoric, same thing after same thing. Joblessness, landlessness. But they spoke about celebration, that we are celebrating after 25 years. But what are we going to celebrate? What Africans can celebrate if they still do not have land? As long as they don't have, we have nothing to celebrate. Now, we really see the part, for me it was not the State of the Nation per se, but the election manifesto of the ruling party. And we are saying people, as the elections are coming over, they must come and vote for PAC, because I think they are also tired of this rhetoric after rhetoric.
He talked very well about reconfiguring the government and resuscitating the state institutions such as NPA, SARS, and so on. Do you agree with him?
I agree with him, but it's late for them. They are going to get to leave the government now. They are going to get out of the government, but they are going to be voted out of the government. It's late, it's right, but somebody else will do it. Hopefully PAC will do it. But really we need state institutions that are not party aligned. We need state institutions that are not going to be manipulated by the ruling party, as they have been doing. As we can see now, the security states are in shambles. They have been used as political tools to deal with political enemies or political opponents, and we are all victims of that. But we hope that the coming next elections, the coming government will really mean what they say, and hopefully it will not be the ANC but PAC.
Mr. Nyanso, thank you very much and good luck on your new government. That's Mr. Nyanso, the leader of the PAC. And it's back to you, Stephen.
Manalisi, thank you. Good evening once again. All right, lots of reaction coming through thick and fast here on the steps of the National Assembly tonight. Time to hear from the United Democratic Movement, their Member of Parliament in Kabayamzi Kwankwa. Mr. Kwankwa, good evening to you. So your reaction to the speech?
Well, the speech was a very good and comprehensive statement of intent from the President. But the problem is that it was too long, a laundry list of promises. I mean, we've had most of these things before, and the issue has always been the failure of the ANC to implement these plans. Look, I think from where I'm sitting, I think he was given a wrong theme for the speech, because if you look at the billboards outside, they are saying following up on the promises, and the president came today and made more promises instead of reporting on the promises that they've made in the past and whether they've been able to implement those. But the other thing where I think we should compliment the president on is his attempt to depoliticize the National Intelligence Agency, but to also say that it's going to be tough on corruption with all the changes, the institutional changes and the reconfigurations that are going to happen at the National Director of Public Prosecutions. But I think what is important from us, especially in the opposition, is that we want those people who looted state resources to be brought to book. We don't just want politicians, rather officials. We want politicians. You can't have the likes of Nomvula Nongonyane who contributed to or led to the demise of the Department of Water and Sanitation, who are allowed to still roam around as ministers of our departments. So it means now they need to start acting on politicians rather than just focusing on officials. But I think insofar as the economic plan, I think it's comprehensive, looking at intra-Africa trade and the opportunities that exist for South Africa there, and to say even globally what kind of issues can we champion, and improving trade and trying to stimulate economic growth. I think overall it was a good plan.
There's also going to be big changes at Eskom. Do you have a view on whether Eskom should be changed in the way it's going to be, almost broken up into three parts?
Well, we are against completely the privatization of Eskom, but I think what they need to do is to first table their plan. We want to scrutinize it and look at what it has in store for South Africa, and whether or not it would be able to make sure that it saves the fiscus of the country from the risks it faces currently because of Eskom.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Nkwankwa. I really do appreciate it. From the United Democratic Movement, Bulelani Philip has more.
All right, thank you so much, Stephen. Now joining me here on the steps of the National Assembly is the ANC's Treasurer General, Mr. Paul Mashatile. Mr. Mashatile, a comprehensive speech, but let's look at the issue that people are picking out. The ANC says it's committed to fighting corruption, yet some of their own MPs are implicated in some of these allegations. Why take that route?
Well, firstly, let me say we welcome the President's speech. It was very comprehensive. We ourselves as the ANC have addressed a lot of these issues in our manifesto that was launched this year in January, including the issue of corruption. I think if you listen to the President, he said action must take place. Where there's proof of wrongdoing and the NDPP, there should be no fear of favor. So we're not going to protect our MPs or ministers. If there is evidence, we are saying those institutions of state that have the role to prosecute, they must do so.
Shouldn't they step aside while those investigations and serious allegations against them are being investigated?
Well, sometimes really allegations can be proven otherwise. So I think once there are allegations, people can't run away. They must face those allegations, but it's the responsibility of the institutions of state to act, rather than, even if you say somebody step aside, but that's not dealing with the issue. If there are allegations, and as the President says, where there's evidence of wrongdoing, they must act.
Lastly, Mr. Mashatile, the proposal of unbundling Eskom, do you not foresee any clashes with the labor unions?
We will consult with them, and those discussions have already started. Within the ANC, as the alliance, we have been talking. One of the issues that the President emphasized is a just transition. Obviously, we don't want to suddenly create a problem where people lose their jobs and so on. So we will deal sensitively with these issues, but we must get Eskom right.
Right, thank you so much, ANC TG, Mr. Paul Mashatile, giving us the views of the ANC on the State of the Nation address. For more reaction, Manelisi is standing by.
Thank you very much, Bulelane. I'm with the Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, Professor Mamuketi Pake. Prof, thank you very much for coming. The President touch on the issues of NSFAS and the violence and intimidation that is continuing in the high learning of institutions. Your comment on this?
I mean, I'm glad that the President mentioned universities, especially now, and highlighted some of the challenges that we're facing. And one of the things that the President mentioned that's useful is the fact that government is going to come to the party when it comes to residences, which is one of our biggest problems, because none of the universities has got enough beds for all the students that need. So I'm glad about the fact that he recognized the problem, he highlighted it, he challenged us, and he gave us some hope in terms of at least one of the problems to deal with.
And how is the registration going on in your institution, by the way?
I mean, we're finalizing orientation week. Registration is going on, it's going slow, but it's right there. I haven't checked the numbers yet as to where we are at today, but we're doing fine. I mean, I've been focusing on first years the past 2 weeks to make sure that they are welcome, they are all accommodated, and everything is going well.
And with NSFAS, is NSFAS administering the process quite well?
Well, NSFAS remains a challenge. I mean, the President explained, of course, to anyone who doesn't understand that from 2018, the government started considering a new form of NSFAS in terms of covering students whose total family income is 350,000 rands. Before then, it only went up to covered people up to 122,000 rands. And those students are still in the system, and those students need the top up, and universities have to top up, but it's tough to get universities to top up in the context of salary demands and all other demands that we need to meet as universities. So it is a tough time in terms of NSFAS. We're going on to 2019, the second year of implementation. We're hoping for sustainability, and of course the President, as he said, the 5 years are key. We'll see how the system works. But it worked well in 2018 in terms of the amount promised. The timing of the delivery was a problem. And so some universities struggle to cover up for the students whilst we are waiting for the money to come in.
Prof, thank you very much for your time and good luck with the registration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng. And it's back to you, Stephen.
Manalisi, thank you. Good evening once again. Standing next to me now is the Minister of
SONA 2019. Let's cross back live to continue to give you some political opposition reaction.
Digital communication, all a big part of that.
We're very excited actually that the President has made his speech to focus on the digital transformation, especially the fact that he has finally appointed the Fourth Industrial Revolution Commission, which seeks to help us as South Africa to speak on one voice when we talk about the matters of Fourth Industrial Revolution. That means even you, SABC, you've got to transform how you do things, but most importantly, having a country that has a coordinated plan, a dialogue that is going to be created, and therefore the coordinated effort that will make sure that South Africans are ready to exploit the spoils that will be presented by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And of course, it means we've got to do everything to try to save the jobs by empowering or upskilling those that are already in the jobs. But at the same time, we will address it at a lower level by introducing coding, as he has mentioned, at the young level, at the early stages, to make sure that they grow up innovative and therefore they'll be able to help South Africa move forward.
You talk about the SABC, you talk about empowering people so they don't lose their jobs. I presume you're very pleased that no retrenchments are going to happen. Would you like that to be permanent, that no retrenchments happen at the SABC? Finished and clear?
Well, I wouldn't want to see any retrenchments anywhere. But of course, we've got to be realistic at times and look into the circumstances that we are faced with and also attend to the issues that at times were done illegally without punishing anyone. Therefore, yes, as a member of a caring government, we don't want to see anyone losing jobs. That is why we are committed in upskilling others, in redirecting people at jobs. I mentioned earlier that President spoke about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which means there's a need for us to drive communication. Right now, we don't have any stations at the provincial
Minister,
level.
I'm just going to ask you to step out the way of the car before it runs you over. I'm so sorry, but do stay in the shot. Please finish your answer.
Right now, we don't have the footages of the provinces because they're not covered. SABC is only at national. How do we make sure that we utilize the talent and the skill that we have already with the existing personnel to make sure we build that capacity both at provincial and local level? Therefore, those are the options that we are looking at. Before we say go home, but what is it that we can do with you to make sure that the investment that we have put in you indeed is realized by the country.
I have to ask, we don't yet know if the SABC is going to be bailed out and if I'm going to be paid at the end of March.
You've got to wait for the Minister of Finance, but definitely SABC is in our hearts and a priority. The people of this country deserve to get the information that they get from SABC, but most importantly, this is the only public broadcaster that we have. Therefore, we are left with no choice but do everything in our power to make sure that SABC functions properly.
I'll sleep better tonight. Minister, thank you so much. Do appreciate the time. Thank you. That's the Minister of Communications, Ndabani Abrahams. I'm going to invite the President of COSATU, if I may, Zingiswa Losi, for a moment. Minister, thank you so much. I have to ask, I mean, obviously the first question is about Eskom. It looks like big changes. I don't think you're going to be that happy.
Thank you, Stephen. Look, of course, the President pronounced in terms of the unbundling of Eskom. It is one thing that we are not happy with. But it's a decision that has been taken. But what we should be looking forward to is what the President has said in terms of a proper consultation for all of us as stakeholders to understand what does unbundling of Eskom mean. Because for anything that government has to do in relation to Eskom in any of the SOEs is to ensure that it does not result to job losses, particularly job losses with regards to low-end workers. So we are looking forward to a proper consultation, and we hope that there is no end game that has already been decided, and consultation will just be a process to tick the box. So we are looking forward to a proper consultation. We all agree that Eskom is in trouble. We all agree that Eskom is a very important entity of government. And for us to grow the economy, we really need to ensure that we have enough electricity. But that cannot be at an expense of workers, because also, Stephen, it will be a contradiction to what the President has said in relation to the outcomes of the Job Summit. So it cannot be our government that will say that in order for us to save this entity, we must do what we said we are not going to do in terms of moratorium in relation to government on job losses. So we're looking forward to a proper consultation. We hope that it will be a meaningful one where all of us, we will look into the state of Eskom but agree on how we shall all march forward.
Ma'am, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Zingiswa Losi, of course, is the President of COSATU. Bulelani Philip is standing by.
Both Bulelani Philip as well as Stephen Curtis outside the National Assembly for SABC News. We continue to give you a reaction post-SONA 2019 after the break.
Thing that I really liked is he spoke about opening technical colleges. You know, if government allowed technical colleges to carry on when they took over in 1994, we would not be having as many matriculants. Will not sit in the street and say we can't find jobs. They will be using their hands and the skills they acquired in the technical colleges in order to make a living for themselves and to start their own businesses. That's a positive thing. And on the issue of corruption, he has a challenge. As you know, that there are 5 governments, there are 5 countries who challenged him on the issue of corruption and said if he does not deal decisively with corruption, then investment would not come. So we believe that it is important for him to show the world that he's serious in uprooting corruption by dealing decisively with all those who have been pointed out as being involved in corruption. But we also are interested in seeing whether he's going to touch cabinet ministers in his cabinet. There are a number of cabinet ministers who have been identified as participants in corruption. So we want to know if the president is only going to throw officials under the bus or whether he's going to deal with his own cabinet ministers. If he does that, he'll be sending a clear and good message to the international community that South Africa is ready for investments. Because as you know, investors don't want to bring their investments into a country where they will be looted by people they know are looters. That's why it's important for the president to deal decisively with those who are involved in corruption, particularly those who are members of parliament and also cabinet ministers. Well, the other things that obviously we are not very happy about. The issue of drugs. He does not have a strategy of eradicating drugs, and he does not talk about removing drugs from society. Now, the ACDP also obviously is going to speak about that when we respond how we believe we need to deal with drug dealers in society to ensure that our children are protected from drugs. As you know that Nyaupe, for example, is messing up the minds and the brains of our young people. We want to see drugs removed from society, and there's a way of doing that. He also spoke about gangsters, the problem with gangsterism. Gangsters, we believe, should be stopped in South Africa. We should make a law that outlaw gang membership. If you do that, then you don't have a problem of gangsterism. There are people who are shot by stray bullets because of the gangs that are fighting among themselves. That's why we believe that he needs to have a better strategy. Rather than control gangsters, they must be stopped from operating in a country so that our streets can be safe and children who want to go to school can go without any fear that they will be challenged.
Reverend Kenneth Meshwe, touching on a lot of things there. That's the leader of the ACDP. Of course, touching on the issue of a social system that needs to be tidied up. For more reaction, Manelisi is standing by.
Thank you very much, Bulelane. After all the political talk and education and so on, we are now moving to healthy lifestyles. And I'm with here the Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Minister, on issues affecting your department, the President said quite a number of things. Your comment?
Well, he summarized them. He summarized them by announcing the issue of universal health coverage, which we call NHI, that it is the biggest reform the healthcare system has ever undertaken. It summarizes all the things we want to do about health, and it's even mentioned that to support that, the President himself has established a war room in the presidency, whose job will be to put up a program. We actually have that program to make sure that the program to improve each and every health facility in the country is undertaken from the war room.
We've been talking about this NHI for quite some time, Minister. Now, when is it coming?
Oh yes, indeed, it's quite some time, but I want to warn you, we are not the only country. This is not just a small reform. It's a big revolution. It's a seismic change. And many countries that had to implement this spoke about it for a long time. You are changing the manner in which society has been running its health system for centuries, not for decades. And it's not something that can happen overnight. Many people are claiming or believe that we've been discussing this for the past 10 years. Go back in history, it's not 10 years. The first discussion about this type of thing started in 1928. Yes, it continued with the College Commission. It continued into 1944. It continued into 1955, if you look at the Freedom Charter, or even in 1953, the African claims. You know, if you look at all those things, it was a movement to say we need a healthcare system that is accessible to everybody regardless of their socio-economic status. It's not something that started now. And if you look at the whole world, the United Nations only adopted it as one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. But if you look at the World Health Organization, as far back as 1978, that's 41 years ago, at the conference, Primary Health Care Conference in Alma Ata, they end up with a slogan called Health for All. By the way, 2000, they were believing in 1978 that by 2000, we should have achieved a situation around the world where there's health care for all people, individuals of the world. So it's not something that is starting now, as people are claiming. Something that has been long-standing, but because of its complexity and the fact that it's something that is seismic change, you don't just wake up and do it by tomorrow.
And just before I let you go, just briefly, Minister, are our health facilities ready for this seismic change, as you put it?
If you read the white paper or the bill, the NHI bill, is mentioning steps to make the healthcare facilities to get ready. And the president also mentioned the war room. But these things are not mutually exclusive. There is this idea that you can sit back, improve the healthcare system, and when it's fully improved, you implement NHI. Improving the health system is ongoing forever. There's no stage of your life anywhere in the world in which you can ever say the health system is improved, is ready. The British implemented NHS, their universal health coverage, in 1948. Up to today, they are still busy improving it. They are still making changes. They are still, they are changing, they are coming with policies for the past 70 years. If they waited then and said, let's improve the healthcare system, even today they'll still be busy improving it. So it's a very wrong concept to believe you can stand back and say, I'm improving this, then do something later. It's like our democracy in 1994, where we're ready for it. There are quite a number of people who claim that we're not ready for democracy, we need to do this first. If by 1994 we could have stood at corners and say, let's improve the livelihood of our people first before we come with democracy, even today we would not have had it. The last example, every year I increase the number of people who are on ARVs. Every year. We are told that no, the health system is not ready for them. Wait a bit, improve it and add more people, there's going to be suffering. In 2009, we had only 923,000 people on ARVs. Today is 4.4 million. What would have happened if I said, no, let's wait first to improve the healthcare system, the drug supply and all that, before we put these people on treatment? How many people will have died while we are waiting for the improvement? I don't understand that argument. The things are not mutually exclusive. They can be done simultaneously. And that's what the whole world has been doing.
Thank you very much, Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Is back to you, Stevie.
Manalisi, thanks very much indeed. I'm joined now by the Minister for Basic Education, Angie Motshekga. Minister, good evening to you. Obviously, a lot of talk about education and how education is going to change. What do you think that means for your portfolio? Are we going to see education in schools actually changing in the next 4 to 5 years?
No, it should actually. What has been, these were some of the weak links in the system of very poor foundations of learning, and then it was catching up with us later in the system. And if we really get this right, which we have been working on over a long period of time, that's why he did say that we're ready to, for the 2 years, we've got programs in place to train more teachers, to roll out resources. For me, that's the answer to strengthening the work that we're doing. In terms of our system is fragile, and half the time we have to get more support. And if we can't get it right at the foundations, we'll end up in this crisis mode that we find ourselves in. So it's very important that the country invests in early foundations of learning.
A lot of talk about technological change, courses in coding at schools. Do you really think we're going to see coding being taught in schools, and not just urban schools, but schools in rural areas as well in the near future?
No, we've been piloting the past 2 years. We're ready because we had to first be sure about the curriculum, teacher training, want the resources. So we piloted in 100 schools, and we think we've learned enough lessons to phase it in, because again, it's going to be a question of resources, of skills of teachers. So we're working with universities, we're working with the private sector, so we have lots of support from outside government of people who've got even stronger skills to get this work. So I'm also comfortable that the pilot can be scaled up incrementally, not overnight.
And teaching using technology, my children are being taught in the same way I was, and I was taught in the same way my parents were. In other words, our children are learning, with a blackboard in the same way that their grandparents did. We're going to have tablets and things like that. Do you think it's really going to make a difference?
No, we are part of an international study, and we keep on warning ourselves and everybody else to say you can't have a teacherless classroom, you can't have a paperless classroom. We need a hybrid of the systems, and if we've got good teachers, good resources, it still is the best. There's enough evidence that we've picked up from the private school, but internationally, that tablets are not, or your ICTs are not your silver bullet. Your child can still have the best that you had under the same systems. What for me is very important about tablets is to close the deficits we have in the system. We have to teach kids who are deaf, we don't have trained teachers. So we're going to use ICTs for deficits, but we're not going to replace the book, the teacher and the chalkboard. They're still going to be there.
Minister, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really do appreciate it. Minister Angie Motshekga, of course, the Minister of Basic Education. I'm going to invite now the CEO of Eskom, Phakamani Khadebe, to join us. So thank you very much indeed. Your parastatal featured a lot in the speech tonight. Lots of changes coming. How would you explain the changes? How do you think Eskom is going to change?
I think what the President announced today provides Eskom with the opportunity to effect the changes. The cost-cutting mechanism which you highlighted is important. It's something we've been working on. The tariffs, increasing in tariffs, or tariffs that are reflective of Eskom's cost is very, very important. But these two things only talk about the cost and revenue side of business. The third you highlighted, which will ensure the sustainability of business, is the optimization of the balance sheet. That is, government will help us on the optimization of the balance sheet. In simple terms, it means that government is going to help Eskom improve.
There are a lot of people who are going to see what was announced tonight as some sort of partial privatization of Eskom. I know that in a way those decisions are made, how do I put this, by people in cabinet perhaps, or politically rather than yourself. How would you describe it then? Is it a partial privatization? Is it something else? Do we have to wait a little longer to see?
No, but the President also stated that the assets, key assets of government will not be sold. So that talks about generation, transmission and distribution. It won't be sold. He made a commitment. What he's trying to do is just to ensure efficiencies. And there's a statement he said, which is very, very critical and important. He indicated that we need to deal with this. That's a pain we have to go through, because if we don't deal with this pain right now, in future it will even be worse. We are beginning to see this. Eskom is struggling to access the market. The debt is bigger. Our earnings, the income we're making in operations, is not sufficient for us to service our debt. So we are at a debt cliff, and this is intended to deal with all those issues to ensure that the supply of electricity is guaranteed and is safeguarded in South Africa.
So thank you very much indeed for your time. Phakamani Khadebe, of course, is the CEO of Eskom. Bulelani, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Stephen. We're doing more reactions. Now joining me is former Cape Town Mayor Patricia de Lille, who's just formed a new political party, Good. For you, Madam de Lille, is there anything good coming out of this speech?
I've listened very attentively. This president said many things. Some of them inspiring, some of them good, some that we've heard before. But I could not help thinking that there's such a disconnect between what he's speaking about. It's almost as if it's a different country from what we know the reality on the ground is. So we hear President speaking about a lot of new plans. Now also, what happened to the old plans? Why were they not implemented? My advice to President is that this time around he must take every one of his new plans, give it to a minister with clear key performance areas of when to start and when to end. We can't again just give plans to our people. But I'm very happy about the investigative powers to the NDPP, because the Scorpions used to have it, but of course they killed off the Scorpions. And if the new NDPP can get those powers, we can see that we can deal with prosecution of corruption more decisively. Other one I'm happy about is the ECD, that early childhood development become compulsory for all children. It's now with basic education. We will see an investment in that in the results of our matriculants by just teaching children from early childhood.
All right, Ms. de Lille, thank you so much for your time, giving us her views on the early childhood development centers. On my right, I'm going to be speaking to a member of the PAC. Well, the PAC is having its own troubles, but from a PAC perspective, the issue of land expropriation is still on the table. Whether the constitutional amendment will be done before the rise of the 5th Parliament will be done is neither here or there. Your view on the pronouncements?
To be honest with you, as the PAC, there was no substance in the speech that was made by the President of the country. The speech was just full of empty promises. The fact that the land issue was a rhetoric to almost everybody last year, I could not believe it that today the president was not able at least to tell us exactly what is going to happen, more especially about the change of Section 25. Although in the PAC we are not calling for expropriation, we are just calling for the return of land back to its rightful owners. But the issue of expropriation, because as far as we understand, you cannot expropriate for something that belongs to you. I mean, it does not make sense. And the issue of the public entities, I know that he spoke about the new model. In the past, they used to speak about the restructuring. And at the same end, I don't understand even what he means by that, but we are hoping as the party that he is not thinking about privatizing Eskom, because we know that capital is very cruel, more especially when it comes to, they only focus on as you know, that they focus on profits, not in creating jobs. And all these public entities, as far as we're concerned as the PAC, is that they are there to make sure that at least we do not decrease or increase, the levels of unemployment.
Mr. Lutando Mbide, sorry, because of time, we're going to have to leave it at that. That was Mr. Lutando Mbinda from the PAC. For more reaction, we cross to Manelisi on the other side.
Thank you very much, Bulelane. I'm joined now by the first Secretary General of the SACP, Mr. Suli Mapaila. Mr. Mapaila, just broadly on what the President said today, what's your take?
It was a long speech, but precise in concrete action points about how to turn around the economy to create employment for majority of our people and to provide services, but also a good lesson on accountability. The President was able to elaborate clearly on the previous State of the Nation address on areas that he committed himself. He gave a full report about various presidential-led initiatives, or whether it was on investment, on the health summit, and all of those are now becoming action points for this year forecast. And we think that it was a good speech, and we think government can actually take a cue from this kind of leadership going forward. And I think many other areas of intervention, the rollout of the NHI, the creation of a new housing bank, all of those are very important interventions. The creation of a special investigative unit within the NDPP to focus on the outcomes of various state commissions, including the State Capture Commission. It's very important because it will be much more focused and can overload the work of the existing work of the NDPP or the NPA as a whole. We welcome all of those areas and many other areas that you had focused on. The focus on the question of Eskom and state-owned enterprises, forthright interventions, and the call for people to pay for services. We welcome that as well. We support that. We think all of us must work together to make our country work.
So let me hear you correctly here. So you support the splitting of Eskom to make it more efficient and effective?
Yes, as long as it's still owned by the government, we welcome that. Of course, it will attract more investment in the various areas of divisions. And he has also made an important call that Eskom should itself participate in the renewable space rather than be the procurer of the renewable space, because it does have the capacity to enter into that particular field and make investment and actually lead in that particular space given its capacity. So all of those are welcome, because this provides a new innovation and new thinking in how the government must do things.
And very lastly, Mr. Mapaila, he talked about an additional 275,000 jobs if all these plans are put in action. You accept that, obviously?
That one was actually tabled as part of the commitment from the Presidential Job Summit. He had indicated here that the possibility to multiply that by almost 5. And if that is possible going forward, we'll really appreciate that, because one of the worst crises facing our country is the question of jobs. And if you get our people working and producing, being productive, that's the most important thing. And I think that the action plan that he outlined today, he has created possibility on how to turn around a government that was becoming lethargic, and state-owned enterprises, the interventions that have been made to make them more functional and create possibility for our country to work. That's is very much welcome, and we are looking forward to that, and we are ready even for the elections campaign and ensuring that on the 8th of May, all South Africans can bring back this government to continue the transformation agenda of our society.
Mr. Mapailas, thank you very much. That was the first Secretary General of the SACP, Mr. Soli Mapaila. And we continue with our broadcast. And Stevie?
Yeah, Manalisi, no end to the reaction here tonight. Still plenty to come, I suspect. Lots of discussion, I'm sure, through the weekend of the President's speech. We're joined now by the President of the Black Management Forum, Andile Nomlala. Mr. Nomlala, good evening to you. Your reaction to the speech? The speech perhaps could be described as looking to the future?
Evening, Stephen. And I think, look, South Africa is back to work. That's what I can tell you. The speech was very inspiring, very positive. In fact, I don't even want to call it a speech. It was a proper, well-articulated business plan. All we need to do as South Africans now is to keep each other accountable, and as BMF is to make sure that we support the programs and the initiatives that the President has mentioned. I liked three particular issues that he has raised. The issue of education, the quality of it, the improvement of the standards of that education, the issue of the infrastructure development or the focus on productive sectors of our economy, where our economy can produce more, create jobs, the revitalization of the old Bantustan industrial hubs. That's another thing. And obviously, for everybody's lips, the practical steps to curb corruption. So out of those, out of the many things that he has said in the speech, I think President Cyril is very clear about where we are going. He has touched on the plans that we need to put, and he has touched on the plans of the future. The Fourth Industrial Revolution Commission that he has appointed, it secures us into a stake to the possibilities of what the world and the new future is coming. So I'm very particularly pleased, and as BMF we are pledging our support. We will be there. I've sent a letter to him. We will meet soon, and we'll look at detailed programs that black professionals in particular in the country can supplement the work and the efficiencies of the state by bringing credible and capable professionals to help work with him.
It's one thing to say it's a good business plan, but this is politics. Politics is a lot more complicated than business, surely. The question really is about trying to get different constituencies in different parts of the country, in different places economically, to agree. Isn't that actually the hard part?
Look, I agree with you. Politics can be very complicated and complex, but the reality is that we have learned in the recent past that whoever put plans in place, we will keep them accountable. Hence, I'm saying we must have a level of accountability. But what is important is that the thinking, what I'm impressed about is that the thinking is at the right space, and I think by virtue of his inclination into his past of being in business, I think implementation would be a lot more better than in the past. And the support that he has from business in particular, I have engaged Chamber of Mines CEO, I've engaged Busa leadership, I've engaged even BBC President Sandile. Everybody is in support. The positivity that comes with the energy and the success that we think South Africa can get is what will take us somewhere. And he had declared even inside that it's not about whether or not you are on the sidelines. You have to start. The failures are possible, we can accept them, but we will pick up as we go along. We must start, we must create a sustainable and a future that has prospects for our children and those that comes after us.
Obviously, one of the big stories of the night is about Eskom. We spoke to the Eskom CEO a few moments ago, Phakamani Khadebe. He was suggesting it's not really a privatization in any way. Do you think they go far enough?
Look, the Eskom matter, I actually participated as BMF in the business submission from Busa. There's something has to be done. The EBITDA of Eskom to date can't even pay interest. It's a crisis situation, and the domino effect, if Eskom is allowed to fail, it would be crippling into the economy. The debt that can be recalled, the fiscus would never be able to cover and plug that hole. So I think, from my perspective, that it's a business a program, well-vested way where you disintegrate so that you can see the cost centers and you can see where the investors who are interested in coming into Eskom are able to plug their money. If you keep it as a big animal that is failing, you might not be able to see where are the problems exactly, and people can't trust can't just trust into putting money into a bottomless pit. So separating production, transmission, and sales, or the selling point is quite critical, and is even overemphasized that if you then disintegrate them as he did, you'll be able, perhaps, particularly at the tail end where you are selling the electricity, to be able to go to Soweto and the other areas where people are not necessarily paying interest, paying for their electricity, municipalities and other places. So maybe the business focus, I don't think there's privatization as things stands, and I don't think it's a complete anti move to even invite private sector players at a minority stake, but private sector players would not invest in something that they can't realize returns on. So the plan is proper. He has to obviously put it through legislation and make sure that we implement it quicker.
Andile Nomlala, thanks very much indeed, the president of the Black Management Forum. Bulelani standing by once again. Bulelani, who you got?
Well, thanks so much, Stephen. Once again, I'm seeing that a lot of people are ventilating their views. Now, joining me for reaction is a member of the African Independent Congress, Mr. Lulama Njaisa. Does this program announced by the president take us on a path of growth and job creation?
Yeah, he's promising a lot, because now he did speak about the way how to grow economy of this country. But I was still expecting a lot of him. For instance, I was just expecting now how he's going to close the gap between the public schools and the private schools. And again, when he started off his speech, he called for peace and unity in our diversity. Then this reminded me of the issue of racism that is happening in our schools. Then I thought perhaps now he would just give us the way how to address this issue, because it is happening in the so-called former Model C school. Again, I did talk about the issue of infrastructure, whereas he said that there's a lot that is being invested in infrastructure, but we want to see things happening, because all these promises that are being made sometimes are never implemented. So this time around, because we want to see this being implemented. Of course, the president is a very good person now who's always making good speeches. But now we're looking forward to whether this is going to be implemented or not. He was always saying, now watch the space. We've long been watching the space, then want to see the things happening now. Of course, it did touch on the issue of unemployment. But still now, this is not coming directly on the people on the ground, because most of the people are not employed, more especially youth, so they don't see this. So it is just something now that is just like a story, that they're having a lot of job opportunities, because even today they are going up and down looking for employment. So now these things now should happen. Of course, it was more or less part of the campaign, that is ANC manifesto, because most of the things that are said now just what is being said in their manifesto. Of course,
Mr. Lulama Njaisa, unfortunately, sorry for that. Because of time, we're going to have to creep closer to wrapping this show up. Manelisi, I believe you're standing by with the last guest for the night.
Yes, Bulelane, thank you very much. I am indeed coming closer to home now with the Secretary General of the Communication Workers Union, Mr. Shabalala. Mr. Shabalala, the President talked about increasing jobs rather than decreasing them. And your sector in particular has been marred by the losses of jobs, as the SABC also threatened at one stage to fire some people. What's your take generally on his speech?
Okay, generally on his speech, there was a number of positive things, particularly when he spoke very tough on corruption and intervention on the SOEs. But as well, we must look at other areas that we have to strongly criticize. For example, the issue of pit toilets in the schools has been spoke about in 2007 through Thabo Mbeki, and he gave 3 years, and we are still talking about it today. The question of creating jobs, or we double the jobs, it cannot happen under what we talk about, the strategic intervention. We know what he has done at Telkom. Those strategic partnership. So we think that is not the right way or the right path to move towards to. But we think that on the question of eroding corruption in the SOE can assist a great deal in terms of creating jobs in that space, and also he made emphasis around the fourth industrial revolution and the digitalization of broadcasting in its essence.
Mr. Chabalala, thank you very much for your views and good luck. And now we are wrapping up, and I am now taking you back to Steve and Bulelani.
All right, thank you so much, Manelisi. We are here now nearly to wrap up this special live broadcast. Stephen, it's been a busy day, I guess.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I think there's several things and several sort of takeaway points. Oh, Manelisi, there you are. Several takeaway points, I think. I mean, firstly, obviously, I think Eskom is the thing that people are going to be talking about tomorrow. There's going to be talk about education. There'll be talk also about the economy and how all of these things are going to change. I don't know about the reaction that you've heard. A lot of the opposition party leaders seem to be saying the promises are great, it's about action. I mean, that is to an extent what opposition leaders do. You expect them to say that. I think there will also be questions about particularly the National Prosecuting Authority. How was that line? Watch this space. I think that's going to be very interesting to go forward. What did you make of it?
Of course. I mean, he seemed to be meaning business, actually, because if you remember, Steve, people have been asking that there are all these commissions, but when is the action? Because people want to see people going to jail. Because I think that even political parties have been talking to. Julius Malema says that there's enough evidence to take people to jail. So, I mean, that sentence you just spoken about, watch this space. I think we need to watch this space, really.
I wouldn't be surprised, Bulelani, I mean, your view on this. I mean, Eskom, the unions, I mean, I spoke to Zingiswa Losi, you might have been able to hear it in your ear. I did not get the feeling she was particularly happy, although Pakamani Khadeba also is very careful to say it's not privatization.
Well, I suppose it's early days, and I mean, I also spoke to the TG of the ANC, Mr. Paul Mashatile, basically just to check whether making this decision, have they considered its implication when it comes to the labor relations? Because one of those issues is that if the relations break down, therefore Eskom will also still find themselves in a very difficult position. So I guess it's going to be some time before we see the actual proposals that will be brought on the table, as well as how labor is going to respond to those proposals.
Should we talk about tone just for a moment? I mean, there are polls out this week suggesting that, you know, so many South Africans feel the country's going in the wrong direction, and yet the president's polling numbers are very, very high. Manelisi, do you think that there was a suggestion perhaps of leadership coming from this? I mean, do you think that that's going to reassure? I mean, obviously we'll have to wait until the 8th of May to know for sure, but what voters might be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Stephen, he gave some positive, sound bites there. I'm thinking particularly about something we didn't stress too much about the discovery of oil and gas in Musselby. I mean, that could be a game changer in that area. I know for a fact that Petro SA, which is operating there, which is having plants in Musselby, it's the biggest employer of the people there. The discovery of these gas and oil reserves in Otanikwa, can be a real game changer and it can create jobs. That can at least give some hope going to May the 8th. And if the ANC get its act together, I'm sure that there are lots of positive spin-offs that came out of this.
They're switching off the lights around us, gentlemen. I think they're trying to tell us something.
Yeah, well, it's the end of the night of that special broadcast of the State of the Nation address for 2019. My name is Bulelani Philip.
I'm Stephen Curtis.
And I'm Manelisi Tubase.
Thank you so much for watching.
Good night.